What I was trying to explain at the end of the last movie is that between keyframes that have a change, when you have the auto transition mode on, you get this visual that tells you that there's an animation here. So since the values are the same on this keyframe to this keyframe, there isn't one of these. So that makes sense. So let's go and now do our fade out. So between 4 to 5 seconds, we want to go from 100% opacity back down to 0. We will do that by coming up here, clicking on Add Keyframe for Opacity, changing the value to 0. And there's our next auto transition. I'm at 6 seconds now, getting ready to animate the X coordinate. So let's go ahead and take the text tool, type out our text, and just a couple little things might make your life easier here. When you change the size of the text, you need to be inside of there, so sometimes it's easy to just click and do Command A to select all of it, and then we can change our values, make sure everything's set up the way we want them. Probably want to center this, put the cursor in here, delete that space out, hit the return key, and then we're going to animate this starting over to the left and coming into position. So now that we have it where we want it, we'll go ahead, click the X, add keyframe, then we'll have that take place over a second, add another keyframe, move it into position either by dialing in a number here or just simply moving it with the shift key held down so we don't change the Y value as well. Remember, the shift key is the constraint key in a lot of the programs. So there's our auto transition. We'll leave that in there for a count of 1. Move over to 8 seconds, insert another keyframe, and you should be expecting to see no auto transition there. And then go over 1 more second and first add the keyframe and then move that puppy off stage. So there's our animation. So here we are at 9 seconds. We just went ahead and put this text up here and we're going to animate the Y position for it. Now before we do that, let's do a little house cleaning here and name these layers. So this is the one that I changed the opacity on. This is the one that I changed the X coordinate on. This is the one that we'll be changing the Y coordinate on. Alright, so we're going to go over here 1 more second. And, oops, actually, go back to where we want to start, add our keyframe for the Y value, then move over the second, insert the keyframe for the Y value, and now with the playhead on over the top of the one we want to change, let's go ahead and change it. I'm going to click and drag, holding down the shift key so that I'm only moving it up and down, have it in place. There's my auto transition, and then once again we just go over a second later, insert the same position by clicking on that Y keyframe, go over a second later, and we can continue on with an animation. So we have to make sure once again to click on the insert the keyframe. I'll click and drag on this with the shift key down, and there's my animation down to the bottom. So now let's talk about some more basics for digital animation. So here's a question for you. How do I make this animation go faster? if I want this animation to go twice as fast, and go ahead and hit the pause button, see if you can do it. All right, so if you need help with that, here's what you have to think of. This is taking place over 1 second right now. So if we want that animation to be twice as fast, it has to take place in half the amount of time. So it has to take place over a half second. Well, the beauty of digital animation is that's very simple. We just take this keyframe, drag it over like that, and now that animation is twice as fast. So I'll hit play and you'll see that one takes 1001, 1001, and then that one was very quick. If we want it to be even faster, we can make it take place over a quarter of a second. You'll see this is going to go very quick. As you can imagine, if you want an animation to go slower, you're going to stretch out the time that that animation occurs. So if we want to see that go slow, then instead of being at its original 1 second mark, we'll go ahead and bring that out so that it occupies 2 seconds. And we'll go ahead and bring the playhead back here, hit the space bar, and you can see, okay, that's a certain pace to it, and that's half the pace. In this video, most things occur at just 1 second, so I'll move it back. Another convenient feature of digital animation is that if you want to move an animation, it's typically quite easy. So right now this comes in, pauses for a second, then goes down. What if we wanted it immediately to go down or to continue? Or let's say we just wanted it to stay there for a quarter of a second and go down. How would we do that? Well, we can take this whole entire animation and click on the topmost color bar. So you may end up where there's a lot of these bars down here. If you click on one of these, then you'll just shift that particular animation. So go all the way up to the top, click and drag, and now we're going to have just a quarter of a second delay, and it's going to start to go down already. And to move that back into place, just as easy, click, drag, reposition. Go out to 13 seconds here. Now this next one, animating the font size, is tricky. You really have to pay attention to exactly what I'm saying. We're going to grab the text tool, but we're not going to just click and paste. This time we have to draw a marquee, even though it's a single line of text. Now we're going to type or paste our text in there, and then we're going to click down here just below the box. Notice it's still selected and that the properties come back. So now let's click in our starting properties. What that size of 50 is what I've been using. And then I can position that where I want it. And I'm going to now click the triangle for the font size, or diamond. It is now here under text 5, which we'll change the name of in a minute. I'm going to move this down 1 second. I'm going to click that again, and then I'm going to blow this number up. Good, I have my auto transition in there, and then I can come up here with just a regular selection tool, drag this box out so that we get the room for it to grow. I could even come back here, put this on left justify. It'll be slightly different than what it was in the movie. If I want it to be the exact same, come over here and drag that out. But actually this could be kind of fun just so that you can see the difference here. And all we did was go immediately big, then down to small again. So we'll go ahead and insert another keyframe, change that value down to something even smaller than what we started with. So there is what's happening. Now if you notice on the original video there was 1 second where it stayed at I can animate the font size. and that is technically, well, there's a little bit of an error happening in here. Not an error, something I forgot to do that I stressed in the first video, and it's actually a good lesson for you to see it. It has to do with making these where they become visible. So let's try to do one more thing before we fix that. But let's go ahead and get this sort of fixed. So we need to move this out 1 second. So what should happen is this should show up here, and then we'll see it for 1 second. It'll do its thing, get smaller, and then, and here's kind of a hint as to where the error is, as to why we can see this the whole time over here, is right now I want to go ahead and animate the next segment here. But if I do, this is going to be on the page as well. So if you remember back a while back, I said to change the visibility of these, we just put the cursor to where it is we want to toggle the visibility, go up here and change always on to off. So we kind of half fixed it. At 17, it does go off, and that gives us a chance to do our next. At 17 seconds, we bring in the next bit of text, which says I can animate color. So let's go ahead, change the color of that so it's more obvious. So with it selected, go over here to the color picker, and we'll pick a pretty intense shade of blue here. And we can even add that to our color swatch if we want to. And then I'm going to hit return, and then we're going to move from 17 to 18. We're going to plant another keyframe, go in here, and you know what? Actually, I neglected to put the keyframe in at 17, so let me go back. There it is. There's my keyframe at 17 seconds. I already have one at 18. It's the one at 18 that we want to change, so I make sure I have my playhead at 18 seconds. Double click on the color over here. I'll pick that red that we had from before. Hit return, and now we have our auto transition. And look at how well it's hinted. You know, it tells us right here it's blue going to red. Let's continue with that and go back to blue, which is going to be easier now since we added that blue color in our palette. Click on the frame here, double click, select the blue, hit return, and there's our automatic transition. So we're going to have a couple fixes we're going to do right here. First of all, I'm going to rename these layers. See if you can figure out, based on my first video, why we're having this problem. If we preview our video right now from the beginning by hitting the space bar and playing it all the way through and then hitting it again so that it plays from the beginning, you see that we have things showing up before they're supposed to show up. So hit pause now. Now I'll tell you how to fix it. So what our problem is, it has to do with the visibility. The reason we didn't notice it at first is a lot of our early transitions don't show up on the stage. In other words, the opacity is there the whole time. We just can't see it because it's invisible, right? It's zero opacity. We can't see the thing coming in from the left because it's outside the stage, but it's actually there. You can see it right now. So the way we fix that is we just go to each one of these, and I'll just scroll up a little bit here so we can see. So here's our opacity. We really don't have to fix that one if it's not bothering us, but in the interest of troubleshooting, I'll show you how. We have to be able to click on it. We might be able to do it just by clicking here. In fact, I think that will work. Keep in mind, if you ever have trouble selecting something up here because there's other items on top of it, you can just simply go into your elements area here and lock items so that you can't select them. But since we can just click here, then all we do is go up to its visibility and change it from always on to on. Then we go to the end of that particular sequence or that animation, And when we no longer need it, which is either at the 5 or the 6 second mark here,